if you pull up to a third of the buyers out of the market, the value of property will come down. And if you say if you make it harder for investors to buy properties, which of course they buy to rent, then there'll be fewer properties to rent. They'll have to the investors that are left will have to seek a higher return. And this is exactly what happened in the 80s when Paul Keating banned negative gearing for a period before Bob Hawke realised what a disaster it was and had to turn it back. And I mean, it's all, look, Bill, everyone's entitled to his opinion. But if any of us wanted to get a view on what the value of our property was or what it could rent for, I think we'd talk to real estate agents rather than politicians. And the real estate agents are all at one. They know what Labor's policy will do is lower home values and jack up rents.
All right.
Well, let's be straight. If you want to know for independent views, let's go to the Reserve Bank of Australia. They're good enough to set our monetary policy in Australia. They are truly independent. They're not making a dollar out of the negative gearing tax subsidy. They're genuinely independent. And we've seen from minutes released by them that they view that the sort of policy we're advancing is sensible. Jeff Kennett, he's never voted Labor in his life. He thinks what we're doing is sensible. Joe Hockey, who was, good enough to be made ambassador to America, great job if you can get it, he said in his parting speech, well, maybe we should have looked at negative gearing. The Treasurer, the current Treasurer, Mr Morrison, said in Parliament in February or March, there are excesses in the system. No, I think the real challenge here is I respect the right of the real estate industry to preserve a business model which is subsidised by the taxpayers of Australia. But merely because they have a vested interest doesn't mean I have to accept that they decide tax policy and the best interests of the nation.
Right. Just before we leave this issue, are there excesses in the system?
Well, David, there are 48,000 taxpayers within half an hour's drive of where we're standing now who are negative gearing, and 30,000 of them earn $80,000 a year or less. 70% of the people who negative gear own one property. 20% own two. Bill's proposition that this is all about millionaires is just dead wrong. And what he said about tax cuts for millionaires, I might say, was looked at by the ABC's fact checker and found to be misleading, as it is.
All right, we've got to move on to another question.
Mr Turnbull said that somehow negative gearing is this Robin Hood-style system which benefits, the less well-advantaged. Please, a crocodile wouldn't swallow that. Right. Do you know that after some of the numbers that are put forward in negative gearing, and to be fair, while Mr Turnbull didn't answer David's question about are there excesses in the system, his Treasurer said so. But even more importantly, and I just submit it to your common sense, how is it that there's over 60,000 people who, after negatively gearing, have no taxable income at all? They don't even pay the Medicare levy. What bank in Australia lends money to people who have no money? It's a nonsense. What happens is the current system, and it is not illegal, and I make no judgment, but the current system allows some people to get all their pre-negative gearing income and help minimise it down to zero. Right. Australia has to make choices.